All right, good afternoon, Marlins fans. Welcome into a special episode of the Miami Marlins Prospects Pod. My name is David Fernandez. I'm here, as always, with Joe Frisaro from manon2nd.com, wearing a very sharp manon2nd.com shirt. I see there, Joe. How you doing?
Oh yeah, doing great, David. Yeah, exciting. We're recording this uh, Monday afternoon, right before the home run derby, and right after day one. The day two of the draft's going on. David will fill you in if any picks come live with the Marlins. They're getting through round 10, but we got a lot of really good info on the first pick, the second pick, and David, we kind of hit a home run. Even DJ Spillick yesterday on the Zoom call with the media congratulated us on the Jacob Berry, said we broke that thing down and applauded us for kind of being all over Jacob Berry and kind of tapping into what we thought, and it was kind of lined up with their evaluation. So we're doing something right, and that's been the aim of this show is to give you really good, insightful stuff with real intel, not just opinions of people out there, but we're getting the decision makers, how they feel, and their peers, and we're real proud of what we're doing there. And David's doing a great job, obviously, and we're going to keep kicking it, hitting home runs and doing this for you guys.
Yeah, I mean that was exciting, right? I mean we had been talking about I think I feel it was like 2 episodes in a row that we talked about Jacob Berry. Ever since we kind of started touching on the draft. I mean, I know initially we talked about Kevin Parada, who ended up going 11th to the Mets, but we pivoted pretty quickly to Jacob Berry as somebody who kind of fills a need for the Marlins at this point, an accomplished college bat, somebody that might be able to move through the system relatively quickly. So let's talk a little bit more about our newest organizational member, the newest member of the Marlins Prospects Pod pool that we get to talk about here. Jacob Berry, the Marlins picked him 6th overall out of LSU. Originally, he started his collegiate career at Arizona and then transferred after his freshman year when his coach moved over to LSU, sort of followed his coach to LSU. He was widely considered one of the top bats, one of the top college bats in this draft. So it's really, really exciting considering the struggles that we've seen the Marlins have over the last, 10 days, 2 weeks, it feels like, producing runs. Getting a guy like this into the system, an older guy, somebody who might be able to move through relatively quickly is really, really, really exciting. What do you have on Jacob Berry, Joe?
Yeah, let's start first because we know the process is draft him. Just a little bit. Let's take us through how that first 6 picks went. Little bit of surprise, and we were all over who could be number one too, weren't we? Who
Yep.
we were saying. Now I was saying for about a month now that Jackson Holliday was moving up, the son of Matt Holliday. A lot of people's mock drafts had Drew Jones going 1 and would have been deserving of going 1. The Orioles kept that really tight lip. But I was out in Arizona about a month ago, and I heard there from some of my people, they said that Jackson Holliday was the best prep player in the draft, and he should go 1-1. And that's how it turned out. Now, what did that do? Kind of set the wheels in motion. Arizona really liked Drew Jones, so he wasn't going to go, son of Andrew Jones, he wasn't going to go past 2. But then the draft went haywire.
It did.
Kumar Rocker goes 3. Everyone was like the guy, the forgotten man, Kumar, and good for him. Obviously, had the medical issue. It didn't really work out for him a year ago in the draft when he got taken by the Mets and didn't, then he went and played indie ball or whatever, and re-enters, goes number 3 to Texas, and I guess he's already agreed and signed. Okay, so now it gets interesting for the Marlins at 6 because Kumar Rocker is going to drop someone. Is it going to be Tamar Johnson? Is it going to be, Parada? Elijah Green, obviously. Elijah Green, yep. who would have been, he's my wild card. You knew that, David, because he's my sentimental guy for this draft because I think he might make a lot of front offices really regret passing on him, or he may be a bust, but my people really like him and some didn't. I'll be fair there. Some of the people I talked to didn't, and some were scared. But so what happens? Tamar Johnson, the safest, high school bat, the lefty hitter from Georgia, high school kid. He goes to the Pirates at 4. Number 5, what are the Washington Nationals going to do? They're sitting there with the highest ceiling player in the draft on the board. They go to Elijah Green, which cleared it out for all the college bats to come in. And this is where we nailed it because, Jacob Berry, switch hitting first baseman, even though he played third, and even DJ Svilick was saying, don't rule it out. The kid wants to play third. I think I reported there, we'll see. I'm not going to tell any kid he can't play anything. Right. But I remember when Tristan Casas was drafted, he was drafted as a third baseman. And, he broke his finger making a diving play. He was playing first and will stay there and go to the Red Sox eventually, probably sooner than later, playing first. But forget the position. We can't get swept up in that. And I tweeted it out and we've repeated it here. It's the position of need is the middle of the order bat. I don't care if he caught, he played right field, center field. That didn't matter. Okay, so now Jacob Berry is drafted 6th by the Marlins. The slot value for that pick is just over $6 million. From what I'm hearing, that deal's almost done, and it will be right about what the slot is. So signability not going to be an issue. It's just, but before it can be announced, there's some little loopholes. However, the agent New York's doing it, but this player will be signed at slot, within a matter of days, if not weeks. Weeks, if not days. Obviously, he has to take a physical to finalize it. They'll bring him to Loan Depot, let the media fall in love with him. He'll hit some BP, and everyone will be happy. Switch hitter who fits that first base / DH, maybe third base if he earns it. But real hit tool, and what's striking, David, is lefty and righty almost identical hitter. Like sometimes a guy might be a little more power on one side. His power is almost identical both ways. And we know lefty power really plays at Loan Depot, and his power's on the pull side. Interesting that they get a switch hitter, but man, we talked about this kid, a special hitter, and seems to be a special kid. He is from the state of Arizona, and he, like you said, he went to University of Arizona, but because his coach went to LSU, he went there, and apparently LSU does a terrific job in developing hitters, and they did a terrific job with this kid as well. Exciting to see him come on board, and we'll really look forward to watching when he becomes a Marlin.
Absolutely. So just a little bit more on Jacob Berry. The Marlins tweeted this out. By the numbers, his let me get out of the way here. His 2021-22 college stats: hit 370 with 15 homers, 48 RBI, 630 slugging, 47 runs scored. I mean, at Arizona, he was the co-freshman of the year, first team All-American. And it just, the accolades are there for Berry, the way that he performed. And then DJ Svilick, the Marlins tweeted this out as well. DJ Svilick, Senior Director of Amateur Scouting for the Marlins, said, "This is a young man that has extreme plate discipline, great bat to ball skills." It's something that, we've talked about quite a bit, that the Marlins need, and that the Marlins need to develop, because that's kind of where the major league club needs to develop, and they need to sort of bring these guys through to support what's going on at the major league level. And if they make some moves at the major league level, these guys are going to fill some holes. Now, Berry is somebody who is mature. He is, physically developed. He's a big kid, and he should be able to move through the system relatively quickly. It'll be interesting to see where the Marlins ultimately place him. When they drafted Max Meyer in 2020, there was no 2020 minor league season, so he didn't actually get going until 2021, but he got an aggressive placement at AA. He went to Pensacola to start and kind of moved through. By the end of that first minor league season, Meyer was pitching at the AAA level, and obviously we saw Meyer's major league debut, over the weekend against the Phillies. With somebody like Berry, depending on how the rest of the system sort of shakes out, I wouldn't be surprised if it was something like high A Beloit or maybe even double A Pensacola for the placement. Do you have any idea where the Marlins might move Berry to start his professional career?
I did not ask specifically, so I'm going to just kind of do what I think that they will likely do. Probably bring him in and probably have him at low A Jupiter as he gets up to speed. whether he's at the complex level, lower, getting, kind of like that extended spring type in the past, because he hasn't played in a little while. Get him up to speed, maybe about a week or two there. Maybe play some games for the Hammerheads. But if he's like, I can see a really short couple of weeks stint, basically just to let everyone, get him into the system, get everybody being able to see him, make sure he gets his legs right and that everything looks right. And then it becomes, is he swinging the bat enough? Do we want to send him up to Wisconsin, to Beloit, or do we just want him right up in Pensacola and Panhandle and see what he can do there and kind of challenge him, against AA pitching? So that's, to me, what it's going to come down to. I can see, like I said, some sort of little, introductory to Pro Bowl in Jupiter, and, whether they want practice games and the real games, but that's going to be the call. And I would, preference wise, I look to see them see him in Pensacola, and then, give him about, a month or so there. And then, you get him in AAA, even if he repeats at the start of 23 in Pensacola, then if he's doing well, then it's AAA, and then all bets are off. But so I think that, this could be a pretty fast riser, but obviously he's going to have to show that he could hit the caliber of pitching that he's about to face right now.
Absolutely. And, people have likened this pick to the JJ Bleday pick a couple of years ago, and we've seen JJ Bleday kind of slowly but methodically kind of move through the system. He's with Jacksonville right now. He's got a very sort of similar skill set in terms of like physicality and power production to Barry. So there's a connection there, I guess. But you would imagine Bleday's not going to be in Jacksonville for that much longer. He might, if the Marlins fall out of it here, they might, start to take a look at what some of these guys like Bleday and Burdick have. And if they call up Lewin, that opens up a spot at first base. Maybe Troy Johnston moves from Pensacola to Jacksonville, opens the door for Barry at Pensacola. It'll be really, really interesting to see not only how quickly he moves through the system. Obviously, he needs to be physically right, which has been an issue with some of the Marlins picks in the past. But he needs to adjust to pro ball at an offensive level and at a defensive level. They need to find a position for him where he can grow and develop, because kind of that's where the questions are with Jacob Barry. Is he a corner outfielder? Probably not. I know that LSU listed him third base, outfield. DH seems like the no-brainer spot for him.
Yeah. I see him as kind of like the Cooper Aguilar role. He'll be a first baseman. DH. That's how I kind of see it when both of those guys presumably aren't here anymore. But that's kind of what I see. Again, I'm not going to tell any kid he can't play third base, but I can just tell you the people who see a lot of baseball players for decades and can project where you can't play more than where you can play, and I think he'll wind up at first, but we're rooting for him. Go for it at third. If he can handle the hot corner, more power to him. And then that's another interesting question, but those are very good points you make. And you kind of do the domino how everything moves that can get you into the system. And again, I don't know what the ballpark is like in Beloit to hit in. I know what it is a little bit like in the Panhandle. It's apparently a little more hitter friendly. But you get him in a lineup with let's say a Griffin Conine, get some thunder around him. How does that impact the pitches he sees? But again, we get him in here. Hopefully he's right, and hopefully his timing. Again, like noted, Bleday signed later. Remember, and I think then he joined Jupiter like in August of that year, in 19, I believe. Then the COVID year, guys got drafted. There was nothing. They went to alternate training camp or home, and then 21 came, and then you got Cahill, who's a high school kid who didn't have to make these decisions on. But yeah, so this is fascinating. I just I know there's a bit of the base that would like to have seen another direction. But I'm telling you, the people I talk to, and they've been real right. And these are the same people that are buying in on this kid. And so I'm buying in on this kid. Obviously, there's no locks that he's going to guarantee and be a superstar. But the signs are there that they got a really talented switch hitter who has a chance to be really special. And we look forward to seeing when he gets here finally.
Absolutely. And so he wasn't the only pick that the Marlins made yesterday. Obviously, the draft is still going on. It is currently going while we are recording the show, and we'll fill you in on what's going on here in a minute. But on day one, the Marlins had a pick in the second round, and they went with another Jacob. They went with Jacob Miller, a high school pitcher out of Liberty Union High School in Ohio. Interestingly, MLB Pipeline had Miller ranked as the number 37 prospect overall by their rankings. He was there for the Marlins at number 46. Really, really impressive numbers from a high school perspective. Obviously, when you're dealing with high school guys, when they're elite level guys, you really want to see numbers that really are eye-popping. And he had some eye-popping numbers at the high school level. An 0.35 ERA. He had 94 strikeouts, only 6 walks in 40 innings pitched. 94 strikeouts in 40 innings pitched. That is spectacular. He was the Gatorade Player of the Year in Ohio. And DJ Svilik mentioned yesterday that he sees Miller as a potential mid-rotation starting pitcher. So what do you have on the Marlins number 2 pick, Jacob Miller, Joe?
Yeah, 6'2", 180, according to the pipeline stats on him. But yeah, a little more because I got what DJ said afterward about him as well. Like you noted, 93 to 97 on the fastball. He has a plus curveball plus slider. Changeup is in development. So it'll be interesting how that curveball slider, whether he keeps the 2. A lot of times the pitchers it morphs into 1, however they want to go.
Right.
But they've been on this kid for a long time. They really liked him. And then as you noted, they see the, kind of the profile middle rotation caliber starter. But then it kind of, obviously they went with the bat, and this is where I know you want to go. Went with the bat, then they went with the high school arm. And what did that do? I think everything today on Monday is all arms. And then DJ kind of addressed that as well, that the strength of the draft at this point turned to pitching. And if the Marlins wanted to get the best value on the board, there were arms. So it's a little reminiscent of 2020 when they took Max 1, and then they took, I think there was a 5-round draft. They had 6 total picks. All 6 happened to be pitchers. And then they got Jake Eater, with the 4th round, and Jake has a chance to really be a special pitcher. They still believe in him as he's coming back from Tommy John. Zach McCambley still with us. He's in Pensacola, maybe a Jacksonville call-up coming fairly soon. And then, obviously Kyle Nicholas was traded to get Jacob Stallings. So this is part of what I like to see. And I do like that. If you could get, because let's face it, and, when 20 rounds now, before it was 40 rounds, you might get 5 players that reach the big leagues and 1 or 2 regulars on a good draft. So a lot of the picks you make don't pan out enough. So, there's no guarantee just goes, let's take middle infielders. If there's not the value there and you don't feel that, you go with the arms and from, you were looking pretty closely at the guys they're taking, but 93 to 97 as a high school kid in Miller, if you got power arms, you might be drafting relievers right now, and there's nothing wrong with that because these are potential trade pieces as well as maybe 1 or 2 of these guys, because pitchers are a little bit different than hitters in the profiles. You need 3 pitches, yes, plus to be a starter, but sometimes a pitcher for various reasons falls. We've seen guys converted to pitchers or guys maybe pitch late, and we've seen like Deshaun Reynolds, the guys that, so you never really know. So I love the strategy because I'm all in on pitching as much of it, especially an organization like the Marlins that can't go and sign Garrett Cole. They can't go and sign, the top free agents. They're fortunate to lock up Sandy, that you take all the pitching you could get and you carefully move it and begrudgingly move it, but you eventually move what you have to when you have to, but you try to preserve as much as you can. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, there's so much upside with taking a pitcher because, I mean, some of these guys just figure it out along the way. I mean, we've talked recently about a pitcher that's currently in Double-A for the Marlins in Pensacola, Josh Simpson. He was a 32nd round draft pick, and he's a guy that might very well be on the Marlins by the end of the season. He might get a look in September. So we can't just dismiss these guys out of hand, obviously. And because they have the ability to sort of adjust their approach and change things. I mean, on Friday during the Marlins broadcast, when they were interviewing Max Meyer, he was talking about the development of his slider, and his slider was considered the best pitch in that 2020 draft. He talked about how he just happened upon the right slider grip, and he changed it. I think he called it a spike slider grip or something, if I'm remembering correctly. And then all of a sudden, he went out the next day against Indiana and he struck out 10, and, he was off to the races at that point. So, the Marlins, as you mentioned, they've gone pitcher heavy here. So the draft has actually ended for the Marlins today. They've made their picks through round number 10. They went, as you can see, Jacob Berry there at the top. But then everything else was a pitcher. We've got a couple of high school arms in there, but then everything else is a college level pitcher, which I find incredibly interesting, because we know that the strength of this organization is pitching development. We know that they know how to develop pitchers. We have seen them develop frontline pitchers, and we're going to talk about one of them in Eury Perez here in a few minutes. But when you look at these guys, these might very well be some of the next arms that get into that conversation. And you rattled off so many of the names that they've drafted recently, and then you also mentioned a bit about trades. If the Marlins make a move here, either to stay in it and they're buyers, or if they're trying to go out and get something to help the team, a year or two down the line where they need to use some of these prospects, these guys are the ones that kind of fill in behind that, right? So if they're going to trade from their organizational depth, which is what they have with pitching, they have organizational depth with pitching. If they're going to trade from that depth in order to improve the offensive side of things, which we've talked basically ad nauseum at this point that they need to do, these are the guys that are going to fill in at the next level. And because they're college arms, they're not going to linger in low A Jupiter for very long. They're not going to be in those rookie leagues for very long. They're going to get to high A. They're going to get to Double-A Pensacola. They're going to get to Jacksonville within, a year or two, what have you. And so these are very, very important selections that they're making. We'll do a deeper dive on the names, once the whole draft is wrapped, and we will come to you guys again as we normally do on Wednesday. But we're talking about pitching. We're talking about pitching
development. Can I make one quick, David?
Yeah,
interrupt you real quickly. One observation, and keep this in mind. If you noted, obviously, high school pitcher with their second pick, and then as you noted, college guys. Well, what's happened? Well, the NILs are now in college. So if you're a high school kid, not just pitcher, but a hitter, I can see this is going to be a trend in these drafts, because after about the fourth round, you probably aren't going to see many more high school guys go, unless you really want to play baseball, because you could go to college now, get an NIL, probably make more than your signing bonus, and then, kind of come to the draft a couple of years later. So just keep that in mind. As the strategy changes now, as the landscape of college baseball changes with money. So the Marlins, Kim Ang mentioned when I asked about NILs and signability is big in what they want to do. So the guys that they're taking are guys they feel they can sign as well.
Yeah. And you bring up a great point. I mean, with the NILs, we've seen it affect college football quite a bit. People haven't really been talking about it much from a baseball perspective, but it's a great point. I mean, those young players, they will be able to make some money in that way at the college level, which is something that they weren't able to do in the past. So it'll be interesting to see how those pitchers develop, how quickly they sort of move through the system. But the pitcher that has everybody's heart eyes at this point in the Marlins system is Eury Perez. He was the Marlins' lone representative at the Futures game during the All-Star break. Here is a clip of his performance.
About him in the instructional league. I don't remember seeing a guy this big, this young, with that kind of body control, where it's constant quality stuff and strikes.
Diaz bounces.
I mean, the announcers were gushing over Eury Perez, and rightfully so, because he was arguably the best NL pitcher of the group for the day. He went 1 inning. He threw 10 pitches. 7 of those 10 pitches went for strikes. He did have 1 strikeout. He topped out at 99 miles per hour. He threw all 4 pitches during his appearance: slider, curveball, changeup, and that fastball. And he's electric, and he's been so much fun to watch at the AA level for Pensacola, for the Blue Wahoos. He has 33 career minor league starts at this point with a 2.44 ERA. He's got a sub-1 whip, 0.89 whip, 195 strikeouts in 140 innings pitched. I mean, he is, and again, just 19 years old. He was the youngest pitcher at the Futures game. He was the only NL pitcher to not allow a base runner, the only one to have a perfect frame. So just really, really awesome performance from Eury. What do you have, Joe?
Scouts that were there, he was the best pitcher in the game.
Yeah.
Simple as that. So it's like the fact that I wasn't aware he was the youngest in there. You said it all. I'm not going to keep rambling on about him, but just know he was the best pitcher in the Futures game.
Yeah. And it's so exciting to see, what he's doing, and, what that Pensacola is going to do, that Pensacola team's going to do in the second half. That'll be really exciting as well. They've already sort of qualified for a playoff berth, so we might see Eury Perez making a playoff start later in the season. So it'll be super, super exciting. But as far as, the Marlins representation at the All-Star game, we would fail Marlins fans in not addressing the scandal that took place earlier today when Clayton Kershaw was named the starter for the NL team, bypassing Sandy Alcantara and what he's doing. He deserved to start the All-Star game. I know it's in LA and it's Kershaw and he's a 9-time All-Star and yada, yada, yada. Great pitcher. Yes, I know. But what Sandy's doing these days, he's the best pitcher in baseball, and he should be starting that game. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, and Kershaw, he made it clear, I'm not the most deserving, but he's very grateful to be starting.
Yeah.
And I think we could get angry, and knowing Sandy, yes, he'll say all the right things. He's disappointed on a personal level. I think he's also smart enough to not be selfish at this moment, and not upstage the Hall of Famer, future Hall of Famer. But I think it will make him, as angry as he appeared to be and dominant, even more because he's going to want to prove. And also, I think that probably people blaming Brian Snitker. Well, it's easy to blame the Braves manager, but MLB is making these calls. It's like as MLB is making these calls, he's not making the call. I also want to mention that we're hoping to see. I mentioned on the podcast either this one or with Eric on the Man on Second ones. I'm really happy that Shane McClanahan, Florida kid, South Florida, is starting for the American League, Tampa Bay Rays, highly deserving, because pretty much McClanahan and Sandy have been the best 2 pitchers, and I like volume, and I love Shane, but you reward you've got 130 something innings compared to everybody else. Is anyone else at 100? I think maybe 1 or 2, a little over 100, maybe Corbin Burns. But Sandy will pitch. We can't be bitter. We can be upset, disappointed, but the mission doesn't change for Sandy Alcantara, because the mission is when he pitches tomorrow in the second inning or whatever inning it is, he does and shows the baseball world who he is. And he has Miami on the front of his shirt. And so we will be represented there. And just a little advice. It doesn't make it feel any better. It just is acknowledge that Sandy will be representing this organization. And that's big. And that's the ultimate mission. It would have been nice to get the start because they would have pumped him up now. But that goes to hat tip to the career of the great Clayton Kershaw. And it is LA. And you just kind of have to deal with that. Sometimes it's an exhibition, right? But it's also a big deal. And the fact that more people know Sandy than ever before, they will keep knowing him. He'll do well. Obviously Coop is out there. Jazz isn't going to play. Wishing all the guys well in a good trip. Great podcast, David. Take us out. Tell everyone how to find us. Obviously, like, subscribe, and we're going to keep kicking butt. DJ Spillick's watching these podcasts. You guys should be all watching them too.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you mentioned, I mean, Sandy is definitely going to pitch. So you could watch them, watch Sandy do his thing. He's been a pleasure to watch this season. You could watch us again this week, later this week. We will be with you in our normal day. We're going to do another episode on Wednesday. We'll recap everything that went through in the MLB draft. And plus we'll touch on some of the moves that the Marlins have made at the minor league level with promotions and things like that. And maybe look ahead at what might be coming with the trade deadline, which is looming. But for today, make sure that you take a look at the dugoutmugs.com/manonto2nd link. Get your hands on one of these nifty little drinking vessels. If you purchase using that link, it obviously supports us. A lot of fun to have as a Marlins fan or a baseball fan. And
watch All-Star game tonight.
That's right. We got the home run derby and the All-Star game this week, and the Marlins are back on the field on Thursday. If there's anybody that you want us to talk about in the future, obviously you can comment here. You could reach out on social media. I'm at by DL Fernandez. You can get Joe on Twitter at Joe Frisaro or at ManOn2ND. Obviously here you can like, subscribe, throw on those notifications for whenever the 5 Reasons Sports Network puts up some new content. It's obviously not just Marlins baseball stuff, but the Dolphins are moving into training camp. There's always talk about what's going on with the Heat, the Miami Hurricanes. I mean, so much more there at the 5 Reasons Sports Network YouTube channel. You should check it out. For Joe, my name is David. Thanks for watching, everybody.